How to know yourself. There is a Greek maxim that says, know yourself. So, the question we should ask ourselves is, how do we know ourselves? How do we know our personality and also the potential we have and can have, our motivations, and what leads us to act and behave as we do? Perhaps the first thing we should do is to understand and accept that we do not know ourselves. That is the starting point and also the first obstacle that we are going to find to look inside ourselves. That is the first step, adopting a position of total humility within ourselves. Humility to recognize our ignorance and accept that we do not know ourselves. Now, this is not easy to recognize or accept because we firmly believe that we know ourselves very well. Well, we may know very well what we like and dislike and our hobbies, but that is by no means self-knowledge. That is by no means knowing ourselves. But that is one of the ways in which our ego tricks us, so that we do not look inside ourselves. And this is also part of our ignorance. So, the first thing we have to do is to adopt a position of total humility to acknowledge our ignorance. As long as we do not recognize what we are not, it is impossible for us to come close to what we are, which is also something of which we are totally ignorant. We are ignorant of what we are and of what we could be, which could serve us as a motivation to embark ourselves on the path of self-knowledge and subsequent transformation. But the first thing is to adopt that position of humility to recognize our ignorance, because ignorance defends itself in a very simple way. Ignorant, first of all, is a person who thinks he knows, and that is the hardest part, because ignorance believes that he possesses the truth and firmly believes from his ignorance that he knows, and as I said before, knows or believes that he knows what is the best for him, for others and for the world, what he likes and dislikes, and since he thinks he knows the truth and how things should be, he begins to confuse his ignorance with the truth, and since truth is not changeable, he is going to tell himself that he should not change. Those who have to change are others. This is of course a very big problem, because if we knew ourselves very well, our lives will be totally different. Our relationships will be harmonic. We would accept others easily. We would not fight to change them. There would be respect for their behaviors and their way of thinking, even if they are wrong. But we look around us, we look at our lives, and that is not happening. We also look at our health, and many times it is not as we would like it to be. We are sick, we are in bad shape, in poor physical condition, but still we believe that we know ourselves very well. Also, with every passing year we get older and older. It becomes very hard for us to adapt to new situations, to people, to places, to generally adapt ourselves, and we do not know why, or we think we do, but we believe that we know ourselves very well. We also observe that we don't give the best of ourselves where life puts us. We only give the best of us where we want or like, and we think that is totally normal, but that is not normal. But still, our ego makes us believe that our current state in which we find ourselves and what we feel is because what happens around us, or it is the fault of others. So, until we can have the humility to accept that we do not know ourselves, it is going to be very hard to look inside us and to start to work within ourselves, because somehow we still believe that what is outside must be changed. The external must be changed so that we can feel good or be at peace. As long as we think that the cause of our problem is out there, as long as we think that anyone or anything is responsible for our suffering and what we feel, the situation is totally hopeless. And we will never be able to work inside us, because in some way or another we will find someone to blame, and we will insist on working on what is outside. So, knowing ourselves, in addition of adopting a position of humility to accept our ignorance, needs also a very big renounce, a renounce that our ego maybe is not willing to accept. Because if you think about it, if you ponder about this in a deep sense, it is like going against our ego. It is like going against it. Because from the perspective of our ego, when everything and everyone are just like our ego wants it, we will find peace and happiness. So, resigning to work on what is outside to change the external is against its nature, is against our ego, because it would mean exposing our ego. He would start to lose control over our lives. So that is the biggest obstacle, to know ourselves. But since ignorance defends itself, looking inside ourselves is very difficult. But it is the only way to really know ourselves. Jung said, "Your vision will become clear only when you can look inside yourself. The person who looks outside dreams, but the person who looks inside wakes." And that is what knowing ourselves leads us to wake up. Now, waking up is real hard, as Anthony de Mello puts it, because we are comfortably and pleasantly asleep. It is irritating to wake up. It requires a great effort on our part, a decision to get up and not to dream anymore, because if our lives continues to be lived by our ego, we will remain asleep. This is also a quote by Carl Jung. As long as we continue asleep in our lives, to everything that happens in our lives, we will call it destiny. So, what we can start to do is to observe ourselves. Gerardo Schmedling says that the purpose of self-observation is to learn to know who I am and to learn to always be me and not what happens around. When I manage to find and know who I am, the first part of the magic begins, and it is that you begin to realize that you are not what you believed. You are something much more beautiful, that is the divine essence of love that the Father has put within you. Self-observation leads us to spiritual independence and total freedom. When we observe ourselves, we cannot distract us for a moment. We have to be totally alert and aware of our judgment, prejudices, beliefs, and mental interpretations, and how we automatically live our lives through them all the time, unconsciously. And just like that, we constantly and automatically repeat our behaviors and continue to maintain our mental model. When we observe ourselves, a different panorama opens for us, and we begin to realize that it is not what others do, say, or stop doing or saying what makes us feel bad, but instead it is what we do with what others do, say, or stop doing what we used to feel bad. People in the world are simply showing us what is inside us, our anger, our resentment, our suffering, our disappointment, and that was already inside us. That belongs to us. And it is through that filter that we evaluate, judge, and see the world, from the filter of our beliefs, our mental interpretations, and duality. So, when we learn to see inside us and we start the path within ourselves, observing reality, events around us, and experiences that we live become a challenge and a very beautiful opportunity to evaluate our inner peace and our spiritual development, because now every time we observe reality, we are going to observe ourselves, and of course, what we feel will show us our wisdom or our ignorance. This is also a quote by Gerardo Schmedling. He says, "Observe reality and observe yourself while you are observing reality. What you feel is going to show you your ignorance or your wisdom." Just ponder about this. So that is self-observation. But you have to pay close attention. Self-observation is not judging yourself. It is not taking it hard on yourself. It is simply observing yourself to remove your ignorance. It is not taking it hard on yourself. be aware of that. Why is this? Because ego loves judging. You just need to observe yourself all the time and ask yourself all sorts of questions, which you may have already begun to ask yourself. Why am I behaving this way? Why do I think this way? Why do I react this way? Why do I repeat the same situations over and over again? These are hard questions to ask, but they must be asked because they can lead us to a different realization, to find ourselves, to know who we are, to wake up, and ultimately, if we work patiently, to become something very different, to become our best version. And that is something that, as I said in the beginning, we are also ignorant about. We ignore what we can really become.